Hello everyone, welcome back to this video series on clinical SaaS programming. So I have been getting questions from multiple users on why I use this double question mark when I am trying to convert something to numeric in different places. So in this video, I will try to explain why I use this double question mark when trying to convert character values to numeric with three examples. Let's say I have these raw dates. Okay, I have 1st Jan 2010, 15 Jan 2010, UNK Jan 2010, which means the subject might have reported that the day is not known, but month is January and year is 2010. Similarly, in the next case, the day component for unknown value, it is reported as UN, but for month it is UNK and 2010. The patient might have reported that it occurred something in 2010 and they do not remember the day or the month values. So when trying to create ISO dates, so we need to extract these individual components like a day, month, and then year, and then convert each of those individual pieces into two character wide string. So here, let me run this piece of code, which gives me my raw dates dataset. Let's open that. So I have date variable in it with the values which I have created as the dummy values. So now my requirement is to extract the day component and convert it into two character wide string. So to make things easy to understand, so let me put it as 1st Jan here and let me rerun this and then open date. So in order to convert it into ISO 8601 notation, so what we need to do is we need to add a leading zero when the date value is 1. For that, one approach is to check whether the number is from 1 to 9 and concatenate a leading zero, or convert it into numeric and then use put function and z2 format to convert it into two character wide string to add that leading zero for all the numbers from 1 to 9. So in some of my codes, I might have used this approach of extracting the number and then converting it into numeric and then converting it back into two character wide string using put function with z2 format. So we will the main question is about usage of double question mark here when trying to convert it into numeric. So we will see what will happen when I do not use double question mark at all. So let me try to run this piece of code. So what I am doing here is I am using raw dates dataset as input and creating raw date 01, and then here I am creating a variable called day C. So and by extracting the first word when forward slash is the delimiter from the date variable, which means I am trying to extract these components, the first word from each of the observation. So and then in the in the next line on line 28 here, what I'm doing here is I am trying to convert that extracted value to numeric using input function and best.in format. So let's try to run this code and see what our log says. So here if you see, our raw date 01 is created. So if there are 5 observations read from raw dates and dataset work.raw date 01 has 5 observations and 3 variables. So this dataset is getting created, but there are some notes here. The first one is invalid argument to input function input at line 236. So here we have some invalid data on some at this column. So at column 10, and then it also has given us the all the variable values which are present in PDV when this invalid argument encountered. So the record was underscore n underscore is equal to 3, which means the third record in our input data set, and the date value on that record is UNK/JAN/2010, and then the day C value was UNK and the day N value is missing. And we also have to note that the underscore error underscore automatic variable has been set to 1. So these kind of notes are considered unacceptable in clinical SaaS programming. So you'll have to report these kind of issues if it is a data issue and have to write a workaround to avoid these notes in your log. So there are two things. So it can be considered acceptable, and if it is the case, so you'll have to write a workaround and then uh, suppress these nodes. And then the second thing is that if it has to be reported to data management team and get it corrected, you will report it, but still have to write the workaround so that these nodes do not appear in your log files. So there are multiple ways of trying to suppress these nodes, or it's not, you should not call it as suppress. You are trying to work around, and you know that these kind of values could be encountered, and you are writing your program in such a way that these messages are not encountered. Okay, so there are two such instances. So the first one is UNK Jan 2010, and the second one is on the observation 4, which had a value of UN/UNK/2010. So why is this message triggered in first place, which is called as invalid argument to input function? So we know that input function is used to convert character values to numeric when we are specifying in format like best dot. So input function can only convert a number to its numeric variant. But here if we see in DAISY variable, which is being passed as input to input function, so has some values which do not have any digits, so which is not a true number. So it is telling, the SAS log message is telling us that you are trying to apply some conversion of some value to numeric, but I am not able to convert it into a numeric value because it is not a valid number, because the valid numbers could only be like, it should contain digits and at max of decimal and plus or minus signs, and there is something called scientific notation where the numbers could be represented like 1e6, 2e6 or 10e7 kind of things. So only those kind of numbers can be converted to true numeric values. In all the other places where it cannot be converted, SAS shows us this message that you have some observations wherein there are some numbers which there are some values which cannot be converted to true numeric notation. Then it gives us these values. But in this case, we know that there can be some unknown dates and they could be represented by UNK or UN, and then we want to suppress that node. Okay, so how do we do it? So in order to do that, we can make use of double question mark. It's not only double question mark, we have something called as single question mark as well. So we'll first try to make use of single question mark here and then see what happens in our log. So there were two kinds of things. There was a note related to invalid argument to function input, and the second one was the line that had the invalid data was being shown, and then underscore error underscore was set to 1 on that particular observation where it was not able to convert it into true numeric value. So let me run this code with a single question mark and then see what will happen. So if we see, the invalid argument to function input at line 236 thing is now suppressed, or it is not showing us that message. So when I use single question mark here, so I know that there are some values could be not convertible. I do not want that invalid argument to be printed. So I can just simply make use of question mark. But if I also want SAS to not set this underscore error underscore to 1, then I need to use my double question mark. So let's update it to double question mark and then see raw dates 01. And let's first examine the log. If we see now, both the invalid argument message and the line underscore or underscore is equal to 1 is not set to 1. So whenever there is a data error on any particular observation, the underscore error underscore will be set to 1 and that line will be displayed in the log. So with double question mark, we have suppressed two things. One is the invalid argument node and the setting of underscore error underscore is equal to 1 in the log. So this is what we need. So if we use double question mark or single question mark or not, the end values would still be the same in your output data set. So if we see now raw date 01, so the value is still missing even if we had used or not, but the question is only about avoiding these messages to appear in the log. So if I now try to remove this and run, so there will be no change in the values in the numeric variables that are getting created. But only thing is that you will get those nodes. So as these are not considered acceptable, so we are making use of double question mark to suppress those things. So again, so there can be a question, do we need to have space in between or not? But it is fine, acceptable. We don't need to put any space after it. It is still working fine if we do not put any space in between the question marks and the in format that we are using. So what if we do not have this double question mark and still want to suppress? So here we know that if we know that the value could only be represented as either un or unk, what we can do here is, so if day c not in unk or un, then day n is equal to. So I am not using any double question mark here, but I am preventing that uh, execution of input function when the unexpected values could be present. So let me run this piece of code and then see what is happening. So here I do not have the message, and if I open my raw data sets again, it is the same values that are appearing in my day n variable. So you can create either this way or use simply use the double question marks. So let me comment this and then just put a double question mark here. So is there any other alternative? So we do have, so some programmers, what they do is they use verify function and check whether the values present in on a particular observation in a variable are only digits or decimal places. So if you further want to extend it to plus or minus sign, you can just put plus sign, minus sign here. But let's, for this example, we'll restrict it to so digits and decimal place. So what verify function does is it checks whether a particular variable's value has only these digits, and if there is any other character other than these values, so it would return as the first position of that character, which is not any of the numbers or digit. So if there is no other value which apart from digits or decimal places, it would return as a value of 0. If that is the case, we can again safely assume that it only has numbers or decimal places, and then that is convertible and it will not give us any message in the log. So let's run it with this way and then see the log. So here if we see, there is no message in the log, and if we open our date01, it still has the same values. So only wherever it is convertible, it is getting converted. But only thing is that input function is not getting executed for these rows because we are checking and passing only those rows which has only numbers and decimal places present in it. In fact, we may have to say that we are only passing those rows which do not have any non-numeric information to the input function. So these are some alternatives and how the code could be simplified by making use of uh, double question mark. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there can be cases wherein you have to check and report those things. In those cases, I suggest you to not use double question mark and then uh, report them by examining the log for any invalid arguments or invalid values. So let's put our double question mark back and then run this code and then again once more examine our. So I think what was the case? Okay, I was supposed to use Daisy here. So let's run this and then examine our dates, day and variable. It is 1 and 15 here. So now let us move to a second scenario on where this could be used. So this approach may have some problem because here this approach of if Daisy not in un can only be used if we know that only these are the expected values. Let's say if there is another record which is coming with the value of hyphen here in UN instead of UNK. So then this approach will have to always go back and then check and then update this code. This is kind of more robust, but again, the best alternative when you know that there can be some unacceptable values or values which are not in expected format, but still want to go ahead with that conversion wherever it is applicable, the simplest way is to use double question mark. So let's remove this and then come back to the second example. So here in this second case, so in concomitant medications dataset, we have two variables for collecting dose values. One is to uh, collect when the dose is in numeric format, and the second one is whether if it is not what do we say? So if it cannot be, if it does not contain any numeric values, but the dose is contains some non-numeric values, so we may want to put it in a variable called cm dose text. So we need to convert the values to we need to check. So the input variables could be only one. It may collect the data like this: a dose of 10, dose of 20.1, dose of UNK, one swab, etc. So if wherever it is having a true numeric value, we want to present that value in the variable cm dose, and all the other values we want to capture as part of cm dose text variable. So in this case also we need to check if it is a true numeric value, and if it is the case, use that in cm dose variable, otherwise populate cm dose text. So let me run this piece of code and then examine our dose dataset to see. So here we have the raw variable called dose, in which the values are 10, 20.1, UNK, 1 swab. So out of these, when we visually examine, we know that only these two are true numeric values, and these have to be put in cm dose variable, and the other two values have to be put in cm dose text variable. So let's see how we can do it. So here I'm checking again, I'm making use of input of dose. I'm checking if it is convertible to numeric, and if converting to numeric, if it is not missing, I am assigning the same conversion again to the cm dose variable. Otherwise, I am assigning the value of dose to cm dose text. So let's run this piece of code and then see. So here if we see again, there are invalid argument nodes and also the underscore or underscore automatic variable being set to 1. So let's see the dose 01 dataset. Here the result is as expected. So these are the true numeric values. These have to be present in cm dose, and cm dose text should have these values which are not which do not contain any uh, which do not contain a true numeric value. So these have to be presented in this way. The values are as expected, but in clinical programming, as these nodes are not considered acceptable, so we'll have to switch to a logic which do not work this way. So similar to the previous case, so we can either use verify function, or we can simply make use of our double question mark. So here I'm just saying, when I use double question mark, how I read it as, like I am telling, like convert it only if it is convertible, and if it is not convertible, do not write any log messages which I do not want to see in the log. So convert it only if it is convertible. So, and then let me put it here as well, and then try to run this piece of code. And then if you see here, I do not have any invalid argument nodes or underscore error underscore being set to 1 nodes. So let's open dose01. As seen earlier, with the result will not change. The result is still the same, but only thing is we are uh, asking SAS to not print these messages because this is considered acceptable. So there we expect that there can be some values which are not true numeric, and we are moving that to cm dose text. And then there could be a third case. So I might have extensively used it when trying to convert raw ISO date values to numeric date values in ADAM programming, or when trying to create our study day. So here I am creating a third example which has some ISO dates here. So let me run this piece of code and then examine our ISO dates dataset. So here we have 1st December 2010. So 23:59, so which is 11:59 p.m. of 29th October 2010, 15th November 2010. Here we have 15th of some month, so we have that additional hyphen in between, which indicates that the month is missing, and we know that the year is 2010. And then here we have the case of 2010, and the day is known but the month is not known, and we also know the time, which is 21:15, which is 9:15 p.m. So we want to convert the date values to numeric values wherever it is possible. So we generally extract the date components using two approaches. The first one is to use scan function and extract the first word when t is delimiter, or we extract the first 10 characters, so which is supposed to be the date values. So let's run this piece of code and ignore, maybe we'll go ahead with this dt1 and dt2 creation. So here I'm extracting date one. In date1 variable, I'm extracting it using scan function and specifying that t is the delimiter and the first word. And then in the date2 variable, I am using substr function. From the DTC variable, I am extracting from first position to 10th position. And then I'm making use of date1 variable and yymmdd10.in format in input function to create dt1 variable. And then for dt2 variable, I'm making use of this date2 variable. So for the first part, let's see what will be the values returned in date1 and date2. And then we will come to this dt1 and dt2. So let's run this piece of code and then examine our log file. So here if we see, we have messages here related to invalid argument to function input at line 335. So here we have one note, and here also we have notes, but as mentioned, so we are only interested in the first part of date 1 and date 2. So let us open our ISO date 01 and then take a look at the date 1 values and date 2 values. So here if we see date 1, so we only had date component when we only have one word. When we said t is the delimiter, that word is our entire date component, so we have got it correctly. So here we have both date and time. So when t is the delimiter, this is the first word, and the time component of 23:59 is the second word. So we have extracted the first word. Our date value is coming as expected. And then here we only have again date, so this is coming as expected, the first word. And then here if we see, we do not have any t here, so the first word, the only word is our first word. So we have 15th of some month of 2010. And then here we had time as well. So we here the date component is extracted properly. So when we used scan function. So here in the second case, when we are trying to use substr function, so if we notice, so we had full date here. The first 10 characters correspond to the date. We have got the full date here, and also the case in the second observation. Sorry, in the first, second, and third, all three rows had the first 10 characters corresponding to the date. And here we only had 2004 characters and 3-7 plus 2, 9 characters. So as we are extracting 10 characters, so only we have 9, so all 9 would be extracted and coming here. So here in this case, if we see when we extracted the first 10 characters but unknown month but time collected. So this is a valid representation of in ISO 8601 notation. So we only use a single hyphen to represent a missing component. So here we have missing component of month. So we represent that value with 1. So if we see here, so this hyphen is the separator between year and month, and then we are representing the missing month component with a hyphen, and then the this hyphen is the separator between the month component and the day component. So if we see, if we had the month value, we would have represented it with 2 character wide string. But when we said from first to 10th, as one character is length, because instead of 2, we are representing it only with 1 hyphen. So this is valid notation. So we should not, in fact, use 2 hyphens for missing month value. It only has to be a single hyphen. So we may have values like this in our collection. So in that case, if we are using substr, so what will happen is we will end up having values like this. So in these cases, so we know that these are when the date is in full format, so these are this is equivalent to the SAS in format of YYMMDD10 dot. So we also have in the same variable, we also have values like this, which do not have the exact representation of YYMMDD10 dot. So because we have some missing month values. So we cannot convert these values to numeric date values because we do not have the month value. So in such cases, again, we want to convert only the full dates to numeric values. So now in this DT1, we are just applying YYMMDD10 dot on date 1. So if we go back again to the dataset, if we see wherever the date is full, which is in the format of YYMMDD10 dot, so we have those values created. So but when creating date 1, so we do have a message here. So if you see the DT1 is on line 335 in this log. So it says there is an invalid argument to function input at line 335, and it is showing us the all the variables values, and it is also setting the underscore error underscore is equal to 1. Similarly, we have invalid data note at 336 as well, because here if we see the date value is not in full format here, and we have an additional t here. So this is not a proper date value in YYMMDD10 dot format. So we'll still get that message for this. So we know that these kind of dates are not convertible to numeric values, and we do not want these messages to appear in the log. So the simplest way is to make use of double question mark. Otherwise, if you have to write workaround for this, so it may get a little complex. So when you know that you may have values like this and you do not want to convert that to numeric notation without having messages in the log, so you can simply make use of this double question marks here. So I am running both the data steps again, and then let's examine. So here if we do not have any invalid note messages, and also the records or the rows corresponding to underscore error underscore is equal to 1 in the log file. So this is why I make use of double question marks whenever trying to convert some character values to numeric values. Hope this clarifies. So let's finally examine. Note that the end result did not vary. All that we are doing that double question mark thing is only to avoid writing the messages to the log, because we know that there are some values which are not in the expected format when trying to convert them to numeric. So as such, by default they would be set to missing, but we are just suppressing the notes or the messages in the log file. Thank you for watching and keep learning.